that works with youth in Garner and Southeast Raleigh. And what we like to do is we like to combine skills, build confidence, work with their critical thinking, their literacy, professionalism, and presentation, and to use those things in the arts, but also to teach them how those skills translate in everyday life, in the classroom, when they're eventually going to look for jobs, because we have kids that go from about 4th grade to seniors in high school, and our kids that graduate always come back. So we're always teaching them on the next phase, the next level of what is critical thinking and those types of things. So we have this opportunity to come in to present to you guys our perspective on how to lead ourselves and, again, how to lead others. To start with that, I also have been 10 years in Wake County Public Schools. I'm an 8th grade counselor, if you can believe that. And what you know about middle school is that it's the crazy of the crazy.
7th graders are the worst.
Right, 7th graders. That's the middle of the middle, right? So, in that phase, I like to tell people that you have to be a little bit crazy to work in the crazy, so that just lets you know something about me. But yeah, so, and you would think that in the school system, when you work with middle schoolers, that the hardest job that you have is to motivate and to inspire the youth that are there because of their, their thoughts and, how they go from being very, young-minded to wanting to be an adult, all in a 2-minute conversation. So, but I think that the most difficult task sometimes is to motivate the adults in the building. And there was one incident, this is my story time. There was one incident as a counselor that we and the administrative team were looking at our grades, and our students weren't doing well. They were, the report card grades weren't good, and talking with the teachers were saying the classwork that the kids were turning in wasn't well. So something had to change. We had to figure out what do we need to do to help these students prepare for high school, their end of grade testing, and to just teach them that they have to do a little bit more work in class. So I took that time to devise and to come up with a lunchtime plan, give a little bit of context to that. In our middle school, we have about 50 minutes of kids for lunch, and 25 of those minutes the kids are in the lunchroom, loud and crazy, and then the other 25 of those minutes they have what they call activity time, which is where they go in the gym and have like a middle school recess. And that's generally because we have a lot of students at our schools, so we have to get them through lunch in that manner so we can get everybody through. So I devised an initiative to take that time and to use it as a remediation time for all of the students, which is they all took what we call a benchmark test. And that benchmark test let you know where you fall about the information that you had. And so you would take the skills that all of your students were not doing well, and each group of teachers, the language arts, the science, the math, they would figure out what are the 3 skills that our kids need to learn and that they hadn't learned. And then we would utilize those 3 things for all the different the subject areas to bring all the kids back during lunch that did not need those, that did not understand those skills, and then they would go through a process where they would have to learn them. And it would be every week, 4 days, Monday through Thursday. They would work on getting a reteaching, and then on that Thursday there would be a little bit of a quick test. And if they got the test, they got a good grade at 80% or higher, then they were done, then they would get to go to activity time on Fridays. If they weren't, then they came back for more of a review, and then they would have to go again to take these 4 days of learning that skill. Sounds like a great plan, sounds like it makes sense, but if you know any educator in Wake County Public Schools, they will tell you that they are overworked and underpaid. And so when you give them another initiative that's taking away some of their free time, which would be lunch, giving them something else to do, then you start to see the eyes get a lot bigger. You start to see people start to say, wait a minute, what about poking holes in all the different plans? So the leadership that I wanted to bring to, or the reason why I'm telling the story was that I knew that initially. And when it talks about leading yourself, you have to be confident and you have to have a belief, a belief system. And you might not always be confident in that everything is going to work out, but I was confident in the fact that the kids needed this information, and I believed that we needed to teach them this information, and we just couldn't continue doing what we were doing because we weren't getting a good result. So as I went into that situation, I devised an idea of, all right, I know I'm going to get all of the fire back, but I know that at the end of the day that these are all people that want their kids to learn. So if I take away a lot of the barriers and just allow them to be, the space to just be a teacher and teach their curriculum, that they were going to get on board. I just had to, be the person to take away the work up front. And so what I did was I told them, I said, you don't have to do anything other than create the curriculum and then, teach the kids in the class during this period of time. I would go through and structure everything. I would, hand the passes to all the kids, get them to where they need to go, do the scheduling. All you need to do is just teach. And that took away a lot of that anxiety. And eventually, as the kids started to come back, they started to see the value in what we were doing, and they started to get on the same page. And I tell that story because it goes right into leading myself, which it goes back to the belief system and the confidence. And believing in yourself is one thing, but believing in your purpose and believing in your passion, that helps you when you might not have the confidence, when you might not have I might not know what I need to do at this moment, but I know that because I believe in this, that I'm going to figure out what I need to do. And I think that the confidence piece is, we can be confident within ourselves, but when you look at confidence, you want to be confident in your ability to overcome, adversity. You want to be confident in your work ethic. And I was confident in my work ethic, and I was confident that I was going to work and work and work until I was able to get the task done. So that's my portion of leading yourself. And I feel like there's a lot of leaders in the building. I think one of the hardest things is that, leading people that want to be followed is one thing. Leading leaders is an entirely different conversation. And that confidence and passion helps you not only lead the followers, but lead the people that want, what you're giving them, but also the people that might not understand what it is that you're presenting at first. So that's kind of my breaking through to the leading of myself.
Thank you, CJ. So I'm going to continue on that vein and kind of go into more of an anecdote that allows me to share how currently I've been forced or chosen to lead myself. So unlike CJ, I escaped the school system in the traditional school day. I couldn't do 10 years, but I did serve 2 years in AmeriCorps, and I taught 8th grade, avoided 7th grade, did 8th grade in Charlotte. And then I worked with the babies, the 6th graders out there in Durham at Willowsgrove Middle School before I then entered into working for a national ed reform nonprofit where I spent 8 years until a year and a half ago, where I decided, because I believed there was some confidence bursting in me somewhere that you can do this, to take the leap of faith, to leave the security and stability of working for an employer that had a mission that I believed in, and for the most part was executing on up until that point, because we co-founded a nonprofit, the Gifted Arts, that took off 5 years ago, but was really starting to gain momentum. And we said, under the security now of our marriage, which happened 2 years ago, that one of us needed to go on and be the champion to lead our organization so that we could start to build the visibility that it needed to really start to plant some roots, build our brand, and really lock it in so that we could have the success and the level of impact that we knew we were capable of. We had that shared confidence, but weren't giving it enough time. It was like what we did after we were busy working and serving everyone else. It was probably one of the toughest decisions that I've ever had to make in my life, and if you knew my mother, you would know why. She's from the old school. It's like, you go to school, you go to college, and on top of that, I was supposed to be on the pre-law track, which I was for a while, until I wrote my thesis, which was basically on the educational disadvantages of African Americans matriculating into post-secondary education and kind of the disparity there. And as I was planning to be a juvenile attorney, I was planning to work with youth because I love youth and law, so I was planning to work with youth on what I decided was more of the reactionary end, as opposed to when I wrote my thesis, some of the conclusive recommendations on how to how to curtail or reduce the matriculation rate into basically the prison system was education. And I was like, it seemed like such a simple solution. Why didn't I think of that? And so while it wasn't I respect traditional school day teachers. I knew it was not my direction to be and serve in that capacity. I decided that I was going to get on the front lines and be proactive in serving youth. And so that's when I made the transition with my career and entered into the ed reform organization that I did. I think that was a fantastic opportunity for me to build the skills that I needed to be able to lead my organization now. But what many of you probably don't know is that it wasn't until probably a few years ago that I really embodied and internalized the confidence that you need to have to lead that CJ here was speaking about. My backstory is that I was in foster care when I was younger, and in and out of that, and then I was adopted around the age of 10. Before that, though, I lived with a predominantly white family. I went to predominantly white schools, and so identity was a big issue and concern for me growing up, and it wasn't something I connected to. And if any of you have ever had the experience, you understand the value of being able to love yourself before others can love you, and you kind of follow the trend. People can tell you who you are, who you're supposed to be, if you don't understand what your own purpose and value is. And so I was nervous about taking that leap and the responsibility of it meant to run an organization where we're responsible for 20, 30 families, and I was still struggling with my own issues. But nonetheless, I realized when I went through this year and a half of being outside of employment and having to drive myself and drive my own action, that I realized that the success that I was having in my career before I left wasn't a result of everyone else's action. I would always say, oh, I was able to do this because such and such, or my manager helped me and did this. And I was supported my whole life. I won't deny that. But when you're on your own, you realize, and I've been working a lot in isolation because he's teaching during the day, that a lot of the greatness or the success that I was starting to have was on my own accord, it was on my own initiative. But I had to become intrinsically motivated or identify what it was that was motivating me. And as leaders, it's important to come back to the big picture, the purpose, the why that Ms. Sampson was talking about and that CJ was talking about. Because their days are going to get dark and they're going to get challenging. So leading yourself becomes, creating self-discipline, creating a routine, creating a structure that you can follow, that then almost becomes a model for how you're able to engage and enlist others to carry out your mission and your purpose. So I'm going to stop there because I might even got a little ahead of myself. We're going to transition a little bit to talking about from leading ourselves to leading leaders.
Right. So, as I said initially, we talked about, it's easy to have that group of people that want that leadership, but then when you have a group of people that are their own leaders themselves, how do you get them to buy into what it is that you are, trying to, what goals you're trying to set? I will say one thing that after what Nichole said, I think a lot of times what we do is we minimize the things that, I believe that everybody is created to do something. Everybody's created to add something to this world. And when you're created to do something, that gift comes naturally to you. And oftentimes we think that, oh, this is easy. I can just, sit here and create this whole thing, or I can sit here and it's not a big deal because it's easy for me to do that. When in fact that it is a great deal because you are, created to do that. I mean, as working with young people, it's getting them to understand, it's not that you have to do, what you're going to do is going to be amazing, but it's not a difficult feat because you were created to do that initially. So connect to that and then to say, hey, this is something that is special that I have, and then feeding that and allowing them to, to build that into transition. So, I believe you have the information on the leading the leaders.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you have that.
So yes, as I mentioned, we do have a small team at The Gifted. We're still a growing organization. We rebranded about a year and a half ago, and we're still pretty much all volunteer staff. We are not getting paid right now. We're working on that. We've accomplished a lot in the year and a half. When I decided I was going to tap into my confidence and understanding what my purpose is, we went from renting space in Wake County and borrowing space from churches, which were really kind in the community, to we've been able to acquire our own lease space in downtown Garner. We were able to basically quadruple our revenue because of that presence building that we were doing in the community. People knew who we were, kind of, and now we're talking to other people who are talking to other people and saying, I had a conversation, they already knew who you were. It's like this amazing feeling. So we built our brand, we increased our student recruitment, and it was because we believed. CJ and I knew back in 2007 that there was something greater than us. And while I probably couldn't articulate it as well as I can now, when we decided to make that commitment and follow our passion, not only just have the passion, but then take the action against the passion, that's when we started to see things manifest. And we really started to tap into that uniqueness and greatness that CJ talks a lot about and that I feel comfortable talking about now. And so when it comes to leading others, I feel like, for me, I'm a trained recruiter. I was in talent acquisition for about 6 years in my last organization before I stepped over. So I was in a lot of management capacities. I had to lead people across the network remotely, which is super challenging to do this. Managing people in your office, and then there's like virtual, they're in California, they're in New York, they're all across the country. I think management is more, managing people to do work, where leadership is getting people to do work that you need them to do, that they're bought into, and allowing them the opportunity to flourish and grow within that. Like they're bought in, you've cultivated that interest, and now they're doing it not because they just have to, because they want to. I think that's the discerning difference. And so in order to get to that place, one thing that I've been able to thrive on my whole life, which I feel like is what got me here today, is the ability to connect with people and leverage resources, which also includes relationships. And so step one would be, you're talking about how to lead leaders, is it between leading leaders and leading followers? I'm trying to give a couple of examples of some things that I'm sure many of you as leaders in the room are already doing, but to be reminded of, is that when you building intentional and authentic relationships with the individuals that you come into contact with. People like to be loved, they like to be loved on, they like to know that you have an interest in them and what it is that they're doing. That is the foundation, I think, to your end goal of getting them to move and do things when you want them to do it. The second piece would then be, when you're in that process, being intentional about identifying what their individual strengths and interests are. I think that was something that I was able to do well. When I had massive national projects happening across the country, I wouldn't pick my team player number 2 to design, a system or a recruitment plan when I knew their strength was getting in front of the people. But I had someone who was a West on the leadership compass. I knew she was analytical, she was logical, she was like, I love processes. That's who I was going to get to design to map out my plan. And when you start to leverage each person's strengths to help them reach your end goal, the end project is going to be magnificent. And the productivity will be higher. If you have people doing things that they don't really feel confident in or is really not their strength, you're not going to get the result that you want, right? So the next piece would then be to take the strength and then apply it to the task or the big picture. And one thing that I think is really important, especially as someone who has to be her own cheerleader sometimes, is your ability to effectively steward the completion of this request or the application of their strength to the task throughout the process. So that effective communication, ongoing feedback, which is not just critical, but also certain aspects of inspiration and encouragement. Because as the leader of especially leaders, people are going to be looking for you to offer the vision, the strategic direction, and when it gets hard and you're reaching your recruitment numbers and they're like, I'm working 16 hours a day, what are you going to say or how are you going to act to continue to get them to reach that ultimate goal? And all of this should be ongoing. So those would be my actions.
I was going to say that, and I guess, finalizing, finishing up, and concluding, as a leader, you have to think about, do I want to win or do I want to meet this goal? And I think that if you have the mindset of I want to win, then this is my vision, I need it done this way because this is how I saw it, this is how I wanted to, this is what I see at the end result. Whereas when you are that leader where you can galvanize people to be on board and to be inspired, they're going to work a little bit differently. As you get into, working with millennials and working with different groups of people, they have different ways of doing things. And sometimes you have to take a hands-off approach to let them win, to let them succeed, and also to let them fail. You may know that this is not necessarily going to work, but I need to give you a little bit of space for you to figure that out on your own, so that and you might find a better way that I might have never thought about. So being able to do that, and I would say that is very hard as a visionary and as a leader to know and say, okay, I'm gonna let go ahead, try that idea, and let's see how that idea works. And then being able to say, you know what, I didn't think that idea was going to work, and it actually worked really well. So being able to do that as well.
The humility piece,
right.
I think humility and leadership is very important.
So I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned when I started working, with youth organizations. And when you bring people on, you have to let them buy in and give them a little bit of space and let them be creative. Because when you have that buy-in, like what you get at the end is better than what you would have done by yourself. So.
And my final 3 thoughts would be, so I know we're at time, and when I get caught up in my head, or I'm like, oh, these 5 grants due tomorrow, but I have kids who have a performance on Sunday, and then I have volunteers who want to be involved, and we create a plan for them. It's like, how do we do it all? What I come back to, other than, or in addition to the big picture, the purpose, our organization is aiming to be a catalyst that's working to eliminate the opportunity gap to provide access to education and programming and arts opportunities that our students wouldn't otherwise have access to due to really no reason beyond their control, financial barriers, education, family dynamics, whatever, is, I have to say, it's a privilege and an opportunity to be in a position of influence. Public speaking is not really my favorite thing, but I'm like, we're going to do this because the Simpson asked us. It's like, what would I tell my students? And I'm not a fan of hypocrisy, so I tell my students, remember the big picture. Remember you have something important to share, and you never know who you're going to inspire when you do it. So remember, it's a privilege to lead. Leadership will evolve as you evolve, so constantly make sure that you're assessing yourself. That self-reflection is critical to your direction. And then you just need a time to regroup for yourself. And that's a big feat, right, leadership? And that you are oftentimes the beacon. So let us be sure to model the example that those who you are leading are always watching. Thank you for your time and your attention.